Hi everyone, welcome to the second lecture of the section titled Numbers. So in this lecture, we will look at two topics. These are fractions and decimals. So we start by looking at fractions. So fractions are numbers that are expressed one on top of the other, separated by a line. Okay, so the general form, these are just, it could be any letters. Like we have a number on the top, then we have a line, then we have a number at the bottom. The top number is called the numerator, and the bottom number of the fraction is called a denominator. So we can treat the fraction like a division. So we can say that the top number divided by the bottom number. We can also convert any whole number into a fraction by dividing by 1. Okay, so for example, the number 5, we can write it as 5 divided by 1. That would the result would exactly be the same. It would just be 5. Okay, just another way of writing it. Becomes very handy when we're doing adding or subtracting or manipulating fractions, which you will see a bit later on in the lecture. Okay, the number 13 can be written as 13 over 1. Okay, simplifying fractions. So one should also try to find a fraction, or it should be always actually. One should always try to find a fraction in its lowest form. So this is carried out by dividing the numerator and the denominator by a common divisor. Okay, so let's look at an example. We have simplify 8 divided by 10. Okay, so this is just another notation. We can write it as 8/10. Okay, so notice that both of these, the numerator and the denominator, are even numbers. So what do we know about even numbers? We know that even numbers both can be divided by 2, or 2 divides exactly into both the top and the bottom number. Okay, so we do, to simplify this, we write 8 divided by 2 on the top and 10 divided by 2 at the bottom. So 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4, 10 divided by 2 is equal to 5. So notice at this stage, there are no two numbers that can divide exactly into 4 and 5. Okay, it has to be the same number. Okay, so there's not another same number that can divide exactly into both of these. Okay, so we can divide further. So 4/5 or 4 over 5 must be in its simplest form. Comparing fractions. So in order to compare fractions, we must have a common denominator. So that means the number on the bottom of the fractions must be the same. So let's look at an example. Which fraction is bigger, a half or a third? Okay, so one way to get the same number on the bottom is to multiply using the crisscross method. So what is the crisscross method? So if you write the fractions out again, leave a gap in the leave a gap in between. What we do is we multiply the denominator of the left-hand side fraction by the numerator and the denominator of the right-hand side fraction. So that's going to be 2 multiplied by 1, 2 multiplied by 3, if you follow the orange line. Similarly, we do the same thing with the bottom number of the right-hand fraction with the top number of the left-hand fraction and the bottom number of the left-hand side fraction. So that's going to be 3 times 1 and 3 times 2. So we have, on the left, we will have 1 times 3, 2 times 3. And on the right, we would have 1 times 2, 3 times 2. That will equal 3, 6 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, that will be 2, 6. Now, looking at these two numbers, we see that the top number now of the left-hand side is larger than the top number of the fraction of the right-hand side. Therefore, we could conclude and say that of the original fractions, half is bigger than a third. Okay? So we can't conclude it at this point. We could only conclude it when the denominators are the same. Okay, we just look at the top numbers. Let's look at another example. Sort the following fractions in ascending order. So what ascending order means is from the smallest to the largest. So we need to sort of these four fractions, which one's the smallest. We need to find which one's the smallest, and then step by step within the next smallest, okay, or sorry, which is the smallest, then the next largest, then the larger, then the larger one. Okay, so smallest to the largest. So in order to do that, we need a common denominator. So the most efficient way to get the same number as the denominator of all the fractions is to use the technique or the method that we learned in the previous section of previous chapter on least common multiple. So what we need to do is find the least common multiple of the numbers 8, 5, 2, 4. Now you could use any of the methods that you used. Okay, so notice here the number 8 can be written as 2 to the power of 3, 5, leave it as 5, 2, leave it as 2, 4 can be written as 2 to the power of 2. Now the least common multiple we know is going to be the largest of the factors. So what are the factors of all of these numbers? There are only two factors. It's either 2 and a 5, right? So we see of all the numbers, the largest is 2 to the power of 3, and we have the other factor is just 5 on its own. So that's going to be 2 to the power of 3 multiplied by 5, which is equal to 8 times 5, which is equal to 40. So that means the least common multiple of all of these fractions, the denominator, the least common multiple of the denominator of all of these fractions is 40. So what does that mean? That means we need a 40 to be under to the denominator of each of these fractions. So how do we get 40? So for the first number, what do we have? We have 7 over 8. So in order to turn this 8 into a 40, we multiply it by 5. So whatever you do to the denominator, we must do on the top to the numerator as well. So if we multiply by 5 for the denominator, we must also multiply the 7 by 5 also. Okay, same process we do to the second fraction, which is 1/5. So instead of a 5, that should be a 40. How do we get a 40? We multiply by 5. We multiply by 8. So 5 times 8 equals 40, and the 1 times 8 equals 8. For the third fraction, we have 1 over 2. So this needs to be a 40. So how do we turn the 2 into a 40? We need to multiply the 2 by 20. So whatever we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. So we have 1 times 20, 2 times 20. And finally, for the fourth fraction, we have 4 on the denominator. So in order to turn this to a 40, we do 40 times 10. 4 times 10. So whatever we do at the denominator, we must do to the numerator. So that's 3 times 10 on the numerator. What are we left with? We get 35 over 40, 8 over 40, 20 over 40, 30 over 40. Now, to put them in ascending order, now that the denominators are all the same, we can clearly see that the smallest of the 4 is 8 over 40. The next smallest is 20. The next number, which is 20 over 40, then is 30 over 40, then is 35 over 40. Therefore, in their original form, 840 is basically the second fraction, which is 1/5. 20 over 40 was the third fraction, which is a half. The 30 over 40 was the fourth fraction, which is 3/4, and the final fraction 35 over 40 was the first fraction 7/8. Okay, now it is in ascending order. So here are some questions for you to try. Have a go at them and see how you get on. Mixed numbers. So fractions can be in the form of mixed numbers. So a mixed number is a mixture of whole numbers and some fractions. So it is best to convert mixed numbers to improper fractions where the top number is larger than the bottom number. Okay, so whenever you have a fraction where the top number is bigger than the bottom number, that is called an improper fraction. So yeah, it's always good to convert a mixed number fraction into improper fractions before you carry out any operation, basically. Okay, so operation, remember, operations are if you use any of these operators, which is plus, minus, multiplication, or division. So let's look at an example. So these are examples of mixed numbers. The reason why they're mixed, because you have whole numbers, then you have fractions, whole numbers and fractions. Okay, so these are also called proper fractions. Okay, they're called mixed numbers, and they're also called proper fractions because the fraction part is the top fraction, the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Okay, so let's look at an example. We have convert 3 1/5 into an improper fraction. So this is a proper fraction. We need to, the reason why it's proper, because the numerator is smaller than the numerator of the fraction. Numerator is smaller than the denominator of the fraction. So to convert it into an improper fraction, the easiest way to do this is to multiply the denominator with the whole number and then to add the numerator. So just put the numbers apart, the number and the fraction apart. Look at the denominator. So we do denominator multiplied by this whole number. So 5 times 3. Then we add the answer to the numerator. So 5 times 3 equals 15. 15 plus 1 equals 16. Okay. And then our answer is going to be 16/5. We leave the denominator as it is. Okay. So 5 times 3 plus 1 over the denominator, which is 5. So 16/5. It is now an improper fraction because the top is heavier than the bottom. Now the top is larger than the bottom. Okay. Now to go the opposite way, so converting an improper fraction to a proper fraction, we need to divide the denominator by the numerator and leave the remainder on top of the denominator. Okay, so let's look at an example. So we're asked to convert 12/5 into a proper fraction. We know that this is not a proper fraction because the numerator is larger than the denominator. So what do? We need to divide by the numerator. So we have 12 divided by 5. So to do division, okay, so we do, how many times does 5 go into 12? Well, 5 goes into 12 twice. So 5 times 2 is equal to 10. Okay, so and then we deduct. So 12 minus 10 leaves us with 2. So writing this in proper fractional form, whatever the number is on the top or the number that goes into the number underneath, so exactly, which is 2. So 5 goes into 12 exactly without leaving without any fractions twice, which is 2, and then we have a remainder of 2. So whatever the remainder is, that goes on top of the fraction, and the denominator is just the denominator of the fraction. Okay, so 12/5 is equal to 2 and 2/5. Okay, let's look at another example. We're asked to convert 118/8 into a proper fraction. Okay, so let's do exactly the same thing. Let's do division. So we have 118 divided by 8. So 118 divided by 8. Okay, so the way we approach it, okay, so we would approach it like this. So 8 goes into 1 0 times, 8 goes into 11 once, So 8 times 1 is equal to 8. Now you do 11 minus 8 equals 3. Then we bring this 8 down. So we have 38. So 8 goes into 38 4 times. So that's 8 times 4 is 32. Now 38 minus 32 is equal to 6. Okay, now we've run out of numbers. So we are left with 14 and 6. So that means 118 over 8 is equal to 14 and 6/8. Okay, so now it's your turn. So have a go at these questions and see how you get on.